Howdy folks, welcome back to another Out of Spec Renew video. And today you join me on a bit of a wind back in time. This is actually the Nissan LEAF from the Cheap Car Challenge. As you can see, of course, it's a limo. By the time you see the challenge, I'll have already done all the modifications on this car. So this will be coming out after the fact. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of go over the car, and then we'll start on the modifications that we're doing for this thing to try and give it its best chance possible in the challenge here. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at this thing. I want to give a big thanks to our friends at the C-Can Action Fund for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for your chance to drive off in a brand new electric vehicle and support a nonprofit organization, well, one of the best nonprofits that's fighting for clean energy is running their 7th annual EV raffle, and this year is their biggest one yet. You've got amazing odds to win because for the first time ever, there will be 3 prize winners, and there's only going to be 10,000 tickets sold, so you've got pretty great odds of winning. The prizes really are stunning. The first prize winner gets picked between one of 6 different luxury EVs, including a Rivian R1S or R1T, a Porsche Macan EV or the Porsche Taycan, or a Lucid Gravity or a Lucid Air. The second prize winner gets to pick between a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Volkswagen ID Buzz. And for the first time ever this year, there will be a third prize winner, which gets to take home a brand new Chevrolet Equinox EV. And even better yet, state and federal taxes are also covered by the organization. The C-Can Action Fund fights for clean energy nationwide, and by supporting them, you could not only win a new EV, but you're also supporting a great cause. So it really is a win-win. To enter, visit www.evraffle.org. Again, that's evraffle.org, or you can visit the link in the description below. Tickets are only $200, so make sure to get yours today. And once again, thanks to the C-Can Action Fund for sponsoring this video. So yesterday, Timon trailered this thing up here, and I meant to actually film a little bit of the intro and first impressions yesterday, but we got a little bit carried away installing his new rooftop tent that I picked up here for him. But anyway, yeah, this is the LEAF. And really I haven't driven it other than just taking it off the trailer and parking it in the spot here, so we'll take it on a little test drive here in a moment. But yeah, stretch limo LEAF. If we come over here to the top, you can see we've got a little bit of slight crustiness going on, especially back here. This is where they sectioned the roof and then tied it all back together. So I guess we've got roof section there, and I assume the other end is probably up here somewhere. Not sure where. Let's see if we can get the car unlocked here. Inside we've got leather, which this car wouldn't have actually had from the factory, being that it's the early model. So they did do some reupholstery and stuff in here. And of course in the back seat area, we've got tons of space. The thing that I've been most curious about this car ever since hearing about it is how exactly they went about doing the stretch. Clearly we can see what they did on the roof here is they patched this in and then just tack welded the sheet metal along the top. On the bottom side, let's see what we've got going on here. Oh, so this is our battery, which ends just right up there. So we're probably going to be forward of that is where it was stretched. Oh no, a little bit further back. So yeah, it looks like they cut the body structure right here. So that's where the LEAF body structure ends, and then the sectioned in body structure begins. So it looks like they've got a rectangular tube down here where the battery's actually bolted in. And then you can see on the other side there, we've got a big rectangular tube to kind of form the box frame in between, and then we section back in to the stock LEAF structure up there. Fascinating. And then those up there are actually where the battery would have originally bolted to up there at the front. So this whole empty space, plus a little bit further back all the way to there, is how far they stretched it. So I'd be curious to measure that. It looks like it's probably about 36 inches. And look, we've got underglow lighting here. I'll have to check that out and see if it works. But yeah, let's let's take this thing for a spin first, and then we'll get it onto the lift, and we can take a little bit closer look underneath and see what all we've got going on, and try to come up with a game plan. Alrighty, we're in. Let's go ahead and start it up. And it starts up just like normal. And it is roasting hot here in Portland, like unseasonably hot. You can see, well, maybe you can see, it's 86 degrees outside. I'll try and turn the fan down here a little bit, just so that you guys can hear a little bit better. But yeah, let's back this thing out of the lot and see what we've got going on as far as drivability for this thing. Oh, parking brake. There we go. And I've been told that this thing freaks out going around corners unless you turn the traction control off, which isn't really something that I would have even thought of, but I guess because of the stretched wheelbase, the rear wheels probably don't turn at the rate that the car would be expecting them to. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get backed out here, and we'll hit this thing on the street, go around the block, see what it's like. Alrighty, off we go. Going for a little cruise. I mean, it drives like a Leaf. What more can you expect? Let's see if it freaks out when we go around the corner here with the traction control still on. Didn't seem like it did anything super weird. Maybe it's really only at speed that it'll freak out. Oh, going over the bump, I can really feel the extra weight of the car going over the speed bumps. You can feel it kind of compress a little bit more coming back over the bump. And it feels so delayed because the back of the car is so much further back there. Let's see, we'll take a turn here. Oh, yeah, there went the ABS, or the traction control. It did freak out, and it kind of cut power. So, yeah, maybe we should turn our traction control off there. That way it won't freak out so badly, hopefully. At least it shouldn't. I don't know how you would go about fooling it to not do that. It's an interesting one. Cool. All right. Well, I'll meet you guys back out here when we get onto the main road and we can do a little bit of a high-speed run / acceleration test. Alrighty, we got a green light. Let's do an acceleration run. It's no speed demon, but doesn't feel that much slower than a normal Leaf, I guess. And our oh, wait, no, the low tire pressure light did come back. It went away there for a little bit, but it's back again, so maybe we do indeed have a low tire. But yeah, let's get this thing back to the shop, bring it up on the rack, and see what all else we've got going on underneath. Dang, this thing's so long I can barely fit it in frame. But yeah, thanks to the unique rear biased weight distribution on this thing, I've opted to actually mount it on the lift backwards since it works best with the arm configuration here. So let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air, and let's take a closer look underneath. I guess before we go too crazy getting this thing up in the air, I do want to see if we can figure out our underglow situation. I did notice there's a couple of switches kind of hidden down here, and I think there's also, yeah, there's some lighting strips on the inside back here too. So if we turn the car on, what happens if we flip those switches on? Oh, so I saw the lights in the back light up. Look at that, we've got rear lighting. Do we have our underglow? Look at that, we do. We've got blue underglow. Not very evenly distributed, but probably would look kind of neat in the dark, I suppose. But yeah, it looks like the rearmost switch is for the exterior lighting, and then the frontmost switch is for the interior lighting. Cool. All right, now let's get this thing in the air. All right, so we've got the car up in the air here. We can take a little bit of a closer look. I see our wiring for our underglow lighting there. And yeah, you can see the whole area that they've sectioned in here. So this right here would have been the stock Leaf floor pan, which Not sure about the quality of their spot welds there. I would say this is probably pretty typical Limo build quality. But yeah, so essentially the way that this is all sectioned together is it's kind of done in steps. So right here is actually the floor pan, but then it steps out further over here, and you can see it kind of does the same thing going down to the rocker. So it comes straight down there, but then that very outermost edge goes out all the way to here. So it's kind of like a jigsaw. It's sectioned in and out, and that helps add with the structural rigidity here. I was hoping to see something obvious for how they extended the cables and all, but it looks like what they probably did is they likely just cut the cable and then spliced it together. Actually, I think I can feel where some of the butt splices might be right there. And then they just put in some rubber coolant lines for the charger, which is located in the back on this car since it's the early Gen 1 LEAF. And then, of course, they extended the wiring for the communication harness on the battery pack and whatever other wiring. Looks like maybe this thing's been slightly off-road. We've got a chunk of mud stuck in there. I think I saw some up here too, someplace. Oh yeah, right there. More mud chunks. That's some solid mud right there. I can't even get that out. Anyway, yeah, so drivetrain all looks clean. I mean, the motor looks spotless, which, I mean, this car only has like, I think 19,000 miles on it. But what our game plan is here is we're gonna add, of course, you'll have already seen all this if you've watched the Cheap Car Challenge, but we're gonna add a second battery to this car. And this is actually our donor battery right here. So this is out of a 2014, might even be a 2015 model year, but basically it's a 2014 built battery pack. So not quite a Lizard pack, but anyway, it's pretty decent capacity. I think it's 83% state of health from what I looked at when I tested it. And what we're gonna do, I think, is we're actually gonna swap that battery pack into the car since it's in better condition than this battery. So that'll be the permanent battery pack that this car is going to have, at least for the foreseeable future. And then we'll take this battery pack apart and reconfigure it and put it inside of the car and put it in parallel with that battery pack. Now, this is going to be kind of sketchy because there's not really an active way to kill this other battery. I am going to try to keep the battery management system intact so it can at least do balancing and stuff. But needless to say, yeah, kind of sketchy. So yeah, you are warned. Do not attempt anything that I'm going to do in this video purely for, we'll say, entertainment purposes for this challenge. But yeah, so anyways, I'm probably not going to quite get started on this today, but I just wanted to get a good look at the car and kind of come up with a game plan. I think that first thing we'll do probably is swap this pack out with the other one. I'm going to have to add a CAN bridge in line because that is a newer pack, but that's not a problem really. So yeah, we'll get the CAN bridge in, swap packs, and then we'll disassemble this one. At this point, I'm a little bit undecided if I want to try and put this battery, once it's repackaged, in the middle portion of the car, or if it should go in the trunk. I think the trunk would probably be easiest, but we're already so tail heavy on this car, I think it would be better if it was in the middle area here, just behind the front seats. So might have to come up with a plan to see if we can do that. We don't have a lot of clearance to actually mount anything in there on top of the floor pan, so that's another consideration to think about. But yeah, I think I've at least got a rough idea for a plan. Alrighty, I guess I'll see you guys here in another day or two when I actually get started on this thing. So it's time to get started on our sketchy modifications for the LEAF Limo here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the high voltage systems disconnected. We'll go ahead and get the old pack pulled out, and then we'll start working on getting the new pack swapped in. And then of course we can work on our actual modifications as far as the old pack is concerned to get it fitted into the car here. So yeah, let's get to it. Alrighty, I've got our 12 volt battery disconnected. Now it's time to remove our high voltage disconnect, which might be a bit of a challenge here because I'm not actually 100% sure how to access it. Normally in a stock Leaf, there'd be just a plastic cover that you'd pop up in the center hump here, and then you could remove the cover to actually access that. But they've got some custom carpet going over the top here in this car, which appears to be glued down or something. Let me try and take a look underneath, and maybe we can figure out a way to get access to pull the interlock out from under there. I don't think it's possible, but might have to give it a shot. If not, we might have to start taking apart the actual side trim in the interior here to actually get under the carpet, because trying to peel this up, it's just peeling all the insulation apart with it, and I can't get under the insulation without probably cutting. So I'd like to try and avoid cutting up the carpet. So let's try and take a peek underneath here. Alrighty, so I lifted the car up in the air. No dice on trying to get access to the disconnect from the bottom, which I kind of didn't think so. So yeah, I'm going to try and see if we can come up with a different way to peel back the carpet. I'm going to try and remove the bottom cushion of the seat here, and maybe we'll be able to peel the carpet forward from here. So I should be able to just pull that right out of here. Oh yeah, I think that might give us some access. Oh, and this actually has the rear heated, this has heated seats in it, which is cool. And they actually extended all the wiring, presumably, so the rear seat heating actually works. At least it looks like it. I mean, I assume they extended all the wiring for the car, so yeah, we'll go ahead and scoot that out of the way. Probably just set it right up here on the roof of the car. And then, yeah, I might still have to pull some other trim back to actually get some access in here. And we can try and peel the carpet forward. It looks like, I can't tell if this is the stock carpet that they like cut and then glued other carpet to over the top of. Kind of looks like it. But yeah, now I've got to get some Phillips screws to get all this stuff out, which, yeah, it looks like they just jammed wood screws in it basically, so let me grab some tools for that. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get this unscrewed here, except that appears to not really be attached to anything. Oh. Might help if I was going the right way. There we go, and I've got one more back here. Yeah, these are literally just like basically wood screws. That's fun. Looks like they kind of broke all the clips off of this. I'll just set that aside up there. Oh yeah, that's gonna work. So we'll go ahead and crawl over here. Take this side apart. And this one apparently only has 2 screws instead of 3. So presumably they didn't break the clip off. Maybe, kinda, sorta. And then I think I should be able to just peel the carpet out from underneath there again. Alright, I got interrupted there by the arrival of a car, but we're back at it here. I'll continue peeling back at the carpet here. Yeah, actually it looks like they probably attached whatever this panel was and then put the upholstery over the top of it after it got attached there. So I'd have to rip that whole thing apart to actually get that off. Definitely not designed with serviceability in mind here on their Limo conversion. Okay. I'm going to try and get a pry bar or something to sort of shove under this carpet. And hopefully I can get it peeled back enough here. I hate to cut holes in the carpet here, but we might be forced to if we don't come up with another option. And we are going to have to access that cover, so maybe it is ultimately going to come to that. I hate to do that, but we might just have to at this point. So, all right, I'll kind of come up with a plan here. All right, I think I have decided I'm just going to resort to cutting the carpet, which I don't know why I was so worried about it. That big floor mat that we pulled out covers it anyways, and I really want there to be easy access to be able to remove this thing just in case of an emergency on our trip here. So I am going to try and get it positioned correctly. But I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put a slice down the middle. And then I'll probably make flaps that go out to either side. And I think that's going to be the easiest way to get this at least as usable as possible. All right, another interruption there from a customer picking up their car. But we can try and get back to it here. Back to, oh, they've got like Dynamat or something. Something glued down in here. It's got bubble wrap on it, which is interesting, to say the least. Oh. So that was part of the ring around the original access cover, I think. I don't know. That's awfully strange, whatever is going on there. But we've at least got access now. I'm going to have to cut through this piece of plastic here. Or maybe pull it out of here. Oh, there we go. That removed it. Now, can I actually get the cover off? With some persuasion, yes indeed. And then we've got our high voltage disconnect in here. And there we go. Now we're out. Now we can actually get the battery unbolted from the car and remove it. This took way more time than I thought, so at least that's out of the way. And we'll just be able to put that floor mat right back over this and nobody will ever know. Except for me and everybody who watched this video and whatever. All right, on to the next. Alrighty, we're down here underneath the car. We can go ahead and start getting our stuff unplugged here. So we just pull that tab back. And then we've got a big tab here on the side that we push on to pull that black piece back here, like so. And then there's one more tab on the bottom I'll push on to get it just the last little bit. And then that just unplugs like so. Then our data connector just has a little twist lock. And that unplugs as well. Nice and easy. I'll actually just kind of stick those on top. And then I'll probably pull the bolts out here on the front of the battery as well as on the rear portion of the battery at the brackets back there. Then we can get this lowered down onto the table and actually get the battery out of the car. All right, so conveniently our plastic cover that would normally be in here is missing. I also noticed that one of the bolts in the bottom of the battery is actually missing as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these bolts out. I'm actually going to go ahead and just temporarily put one over there since that's actually the heaviest part of the pack here on the bottom. And I want to try and make sure we've got decent support for the pack. Oh, well, that might be why it was missing, because it's stripped out. Yeah, the actual nut insert in there is stripped out. So that's fun. Hopefully I can get that bolt back out of there. But yeah, we've got those two bolts out. Now I can get this thing lowered down onto the table and just unbolt it from the car and drop it out. Alrighty, so we've got the old battery out of the car and on the floor here. I've gone ahead and swapped it out on the table with our newer battery pack. I'm actually going to go ahead and get this pack opened up because we need to run some cables out of it so that we can put our other pack in parallel with it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get the lid unbolted here, and I'll have to go ahead and slice through the gasket material that they use to attach it. So I've got my multi-tool here with my cutting blade, and yeah, we'll zip all these fasteners out, get this thing opened up. Alrighty, got all the sealant finally peeled out from under here, and we're gonna go ahead and peel the lid off this thing. So it should be mostly free. Might have a couple little stuck spots on that side. We're gonna have to hit it with the knife a little bit. Yeah, see the knife. There we go. I think that's the extra thick section where they overlap it. Yep. Cool. Alrighty, now we can go ahead and get to our modifications. Alrighty, it's the next day here. We're gonna go ahead and get started on what's actually one of the sketchiest parts of this whole installation, and we're gonna start installing our cables on the input side of the contactors. So technically with the high voltage disconnect removed, there won't be a complete circuit, but with the disconnect in, that circuit will be live all the time. And there's no way to disable that, essentially. So anyway, yeah, that's one of the sketchiest parts of this whole operation, is that those cables are going to be live connected to the other battery pack the entire time, which is why yeah, definitely got to say, do not do anything that you see in this video, for sure. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get those in. I'm going to have to cut some holes in the lid for the cables to come out of, and I've got some, just some cable glands that those will go through, so we'll be able to make sure they're good and sealed. And I've already got my cables pre-terminated here. So I've got some cabling here that we're going to use, and yeah, so we've got positive and negative. I don't know the lengths of the cable yet, so I just had a big roll of cable and I just cut it in half, and I just terminated one end on each. We'll cut them to length later when we figure out what length we actually need, depending on how this pack ends up going into the car. So yeah, at this point, I'm just going to get started on this. Probably not going to go too super into detail with it. But yeah, I'll show you guys where we're at once I get the cables actually connected on here. Alrighty, so I got this assembled with the cables on the input side of the contactor. So we've got positive cable down here, and it's going to kind of curve up and around. Negative cable there, it's going to kind of curve around, do a 180. And then both cables are going to come up and out right in here. And I've put corresponding glands on the lid for the battery. So that's where the cables will come out. And then what we'll have to do is we'll drill a couple of holes in the car. They're going to go through the tunnel right here. So I'm actually going to have them just come right out the side. So the cables will come right out of the battery and just do a little curve and go right in the side of this tunnel here. And then they'll pop out in the interior. And then hopefully in the center of the car is where we're going to have this pack reconfigured, and then we'll connect those cables up to this. We'll have to probably do some charging and discharging and stuff to get the voltages equalized, and then we should be able to connect them together. But yeah, for now, I'm going to go ahead and get the cables fed through the lid here. Then we'll get the lid installed back onto the battery pack. All right, battery pack is fully assembled. We've got the cables sticking out of the top. I did just put some tape on the ends of those. Again, this is not live without the disconnect in, but there is still voltage potential between there and the disconnect itself. So yeah, again, super sketchy, not recommended, but that's what we're doing here. So now all we've got to do is go ahead and drill some holes in the bottom of the car, which I'll have to take some measurements on the pack. Basically, I'll just use the mounting bolts as a reference. We don't have to be 100% perfectly aligned, but as long as we're within ½ an inch, we should be good. There's going to be some slack in the cables there for it to be able to fit. But yeah, we'll get some measurements in and figure out where we need to drill holes. It should be somewhere just a little bit rearward of the frontmost bolt hole, so probably right about here someplace in this region. Alrighty, so I went ahead and drilled our holes up here in the tunnel for the 2 glands on our cables going into the car. And of course I also cut another flap in the carpet there where those will pass through. So I think we can go ahead and probably almost be ready to start putting that pack into the car here. But we do need to make a few modifications here to the data connector. Because this is a Gen 1 LEAF, the ZE0, we need to swap this connector out with the later style connector. On a normal car, I would probably use basically an adapter instead of cutting up the harness and modifying it, but I'm actually back ordered on the parts that I would need to do that, and this has already been hacked apart enough that I don't feel too bad about taking it apart one more time. And actually, the harness on this is already extended a bit longer than it needs to be, so I think I can pretty much just chop this off and crimp some new terminals on, and we can just reattach our new connector there. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. Alrighty, I've gone ahead and wired in our new connector for the battery plug. Of course, they had already crimped on the old connector and extended the wiring harness, so I made sure to try and make my wiring long enough that I could go beyond their crimps and eliminate the number of connections in between wiring that we have here. But we should be all good to go there. Pretty much all of the pin out between the newer style connector and the old style connector are the same pin numbers. The only one that's really different is the charge ignition. So on the old style connector it's pin 21, on the newer style it's pin 31. But other than that, everything else lines up. Alright, so we've got the old battery pack opened up here. One thing that is actually pretty cool about the old school LEAF batteries like this is rather than having the lid glued down with an adhesive gasket material, they actually have this rubber gasket that just goes around the perimeter. So once you take out all the bolts, the lid just comes right off. So it's a lot more serviceable from that respect. I always think it's kind of a bummer that they went away from this method, because I kind of like the rubber gasket method rather than having the whole lid glued down. In any case, we're going to go ahead and get started on tearing this thing apart. So what I'm probably going to have to do first is unplug everything from the LBC here. That's what Nissan essentially calls the BMS, is the lithium battery controller. That's what LBC stands for. So we'll go ahead and unplug the LBC and start disconnecting the cables from the different module groups. Basically, each one of these that you see is a module. On these packs, each module is 2S, 2P, so they have a total of 4 cells with 2 cells in series and 2 cells in parallel. In the rear stack here, there's 24 of those cells, or rather 24 of those modules, sorry. And that makes up, actually this is 48 modules. No, it is 24 modules. 24 modules in the rear stack here, so that makes up half the pack. And then the other 24 modules, there's 12 in each of these stacks on either side. So you kind of have 4 vertical stacks of modules, but they're all connected to a single plate. So these 2 stacks and these 2 stacks are all on one big plate. And I think the plan to fit all this into the car is we'll have this rear stack at the bottom, and I'm going to build basically a steel tube frame to hold the stack in place, and then we'll stack these 2 groups on top. So one of these will sit right on top of the rear stack, and then the other one will actually get flipped upside down and sit on top of the other one, so that we're as space efficient as possible. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get started tearing this apart. And yeah, probably not going to go too into detail because I need to try and get this done so that it can get shipped out here in a few days. So we'll continue on with the disassembly here, and then I can start taking some measurements and make sure that we're going to be able to fit everything in here the way that I want to fit it in, which ideally is going to be in the middle portion of the car. We may end up having to put the stuff in the trunk, but I want to try and get it in the middle. I think that's going to be the best place for it to live. So, yeah, let's get to it. Alrighty, we're moving right along here. I've got everything moved over here for the battery stuff. I did get the rear module stack out here. I've been taking some dimensions and trying to figure out what lengths I need to cut my metal here. And I am working on cutting stuff to length here one at a time. Here's a couple of the pieces that I'm going to go ahead and get started welding up to build basically the bottom frame just to hold the rear stack here. And then we'll kind of build up from there for the other two stacks of modules there. So, yeah, we'll just keep on keeping on here. And, yeah, we'll get to it. All right, so I've got the basic bottom portion of the frame all mocked up here. I have a couple of little things that I need to touch up. Of course, a lot of this is just tacked together, so I'll need to do some final welds there. But there's also a couple notches that I need to notch out where there's some brackets on this side and over there on the other side. So I just got to notch those out a little bit so it'll fit, but it looks like I should be pretty good. I've also got to add sort of a spacer block on this side to meet up with those holes. I wouldn't have been able to make it fit because the studs back here would have been in the way, and yeah, it just works out a little bit better to have it a touch wider on this side. So yeah, we'll go ahead and lift this back up, make some final modifications, and get this all finally welded, and then we should be able to start working on the other portions of the frames as well, I think. All right, I've got the frame all finished up. I added some mounting feet there on the bottom, and added our extra piece in here for that to mount to. Only thing that's off a little bit is this bar on the front side. It's just a touch low, so we'll probably have to shove some washers in there or something. Yeah, we're just kind of throwing this thing together, so trying to be as accurate as possible while also trying to work on the timeline and whatnot for this. So yeah, I think the next step is basically to mark out all the holes here where this is going to mount, and then drill them out, and then we can get this thing bolted on here, and then hopefully we can get it into the car. All the holes are drilled out. I put a bolt in every hole just to make sure everything lines up, and it does. And now I get to take it all back apart so that we can add some tabs and stuff to start installing the other module stacks. So those are going to be the next ones to go on top of here. So what I'm going to have to do is build some brackets so that our next stage can basically attach on top of this one. So I'm going to come up with a bit of a game plan for that. There might be a few things on here that I'm going to have to avoid, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this thing and see where we're at. Like this right here where one of our cables attach. That is something that we're going to have to avoid. What else? Looks like this side we're pretty much all clear. The LBC does mount. No, actually it mounts to the other side. The LBC mounts on this side. So we want to try and clear the LBC because I do want to try and keep that intact so that this thing can at least still balance. Won't really have any other active control other than just balancing, but that's a plus to at least have that. Back side, I think we're all clear. There's nothing back there that we really have to avoid. And the front side, of course, we've got all the terminations and stuff, but there's probably not going to be anything up there. So yeah, just to decide what I'm going to do for mounting on this side. The other side's easy. This side, not so much. So yeah, I'll have to come up with a plan for that. Alrighty, so I've got this thing all buttoned up here. I've got my mounting tabs on this side added, as you can see. And then on this side, in hindsight, I probably should have made this a little bit longer and done an extension piece like I did on the other side, but that's okay. What I ended up doing instead is I just mounted the tabs off to the side of the tubes here with a little support there. I still need to kind of clean this up, cut that little excess piece off that's hanging out there. but that's going to be our plan. The LBC isn't going to fit where it was originally, but what I think we can do is basically just flip this harness around and mount the LBC on the front here upside down. So I'll just have to make some brackets or something for it, but it'll end up sitting somewhere right around here. At least that's the plan. So now it's just time to start figuring out how the next stage is going to mount on here. So we'll have, of course, our posts that are going to go up to, you know, somewhere right around here. And then we'll have our crossbars that go across widthwise to support the next module stack here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started working on that. Take some measurements, figure out what we need to do, and we'll get it all figured out. Alright, I've got our mid stage done. Ended up pretty close to the edge on these. These holes are drilled pretty much right on the edge of that tube, but we were able to get it to fit. The next one, we're probably going to have to make sure that it sticks out just a little bit more so that the tube actually clears the outside of the modules, because it's going to be upside down, so it's going to actually have to clear the tube. We're also going to have to make sure to have clearance on the ends where the heating elements are. I suppose I could probably remove these and just cut the stud off. But yeah, we're going for super low effort for what we can get here. So I think we're pretty solid on that. I've just got to come up with a plan now. I'll take some measurements and stuff, take a look at this thing, and see what I can come up with to get the third module stack. Whoa, a little too much zoom there. Get the third module stack on here. Of course, it'll be flipped upside down so that the steps on it match with this one. So, yeah. Gonna take a peek, see what I can come up with. Alright, as you can see, I got the module stack back off here, but I think I've come up with a game plan. What I'm gonna do, and of course, hindsight being 2020, I should have originally made the base both wider and taller and done sort of flanges like I did on that side. But of course, I didn't do that. We ended up having to make this side wider, and now we're gonna have to end up making it even wider at the top. So we're just getting basically more janky the taller we get here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another leg that basically bolts onto the sides like this. That'll get us just the right amount of width that we need in order to go up. We need to be about 10 inches above this level for our top bar that we're going to have. And then to actually attach the modules, we can't actually have a bar running straight across anyways for these when they're upside down, because these other brackets get in the way. I could bend them or do whatever to make that work, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use some of the short cut off pieces of the tubing that I have here, and it fits perfectly in between the wedge there. So basically our tube that's going to be running parallel this way is just going to have little arms that come out to contact each of the bolt down points, 4 on each side. Instead of making the next stage one big piece like I did for both of these, so I've got one big piece down here and then a second big piece right here, I'm actually going to do the front and the rear as 2 separate pieces. Not sure if I'm going to put a cross brace going across this way or not. We'll have to play it by ear on that one. For now, I'm going to say probably not, but we might add it if I decide that it doesn't have enough lateral rigidity. So yeah, we're going to have to grind down some of the welds here so that our tubes can bolt on flush. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that when this gets assembled in the car, what I'll probably do is, of course, I don't think I've even talked about how I'm going to get this thing in. And of course, this is all just a theory at this point. But I think I'm going to assemble the complete bottom layer. So we'll have our bottom piece here with the large stack on it. And then we'll go ahead and basically forklift it in through the door. And I'll just have to get it in as far as I possibly can. And then what I'll probably have to do is figure out a way to scoot it forward, probably using a combination of the forklift and maybe my engine crane over here. And then once we get it in here and positioned, and I kind of have my final positioning of where I think that I want it, we'll go ahead and drill holes through the floor to bolt it in place. Another thing that I still might do if I have enough material left is I might add some additional legs here on the bottom row, just so that we have more mounting points, because this thing's pretty heavy and I don't know if just 4 mounting points is quite safe enough if this thing were in a crash. So yeah, I think I want to add some additional mounting points if possible. I don't think I want to put just a single one in the middle, for one, because I'll have to recalculate for the height of the tunnel in here that sticks up. And for another, there's also coolant lines and stuff that go to the charger going through the tunnel. Not to mention our cables are going to come through the side of the tunnel. So I think that I want to try and do basically, you know, a leg out here, which are our corners, and then maybe do another inner leg like so. Yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense in my head. So I'm going to get to it, try and keep getting this thing together. I want to try and at least have a completed rack here by the end of the day, and maybe start to get that module stack into the car, and then kind of see where we can go from there. Alrighty, our topmost module stack here is starting to take shape. I've just got this all tacked together. I wanted to make sure it'll all fit, and yeah, I do have this the correct way around, right? That would suck if it wasn't. I believe it is. Yeah, that is the right way around. So I'm going to go ahead and mark out all of the locations where our extensions are going to have to go, because we want to get that lined up just right. Of course, some of these where I have my hooks, it's going to be a bit tough to insert a piece in there, but I think I can get it pretty dang close there by eye. And this one, we'll do the same deal. Measure it by laser eyeball. All right, that's all the mounting locations marked out. I'll go ahead and pick this back up and then get our tabs welded on there, and then I will probably set it back down on here again, just to make sure it all fits before I do the final welds on it, just to make sure, doubly sure, that everything is good. All right. Alrighty, got the module stack temporarily installed into position. I've got all of our little standoffs tacked on here, and it looks like everything lines up perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all welded up, and then I'll put this back on yet again, mark all the holes, and then take it off again, and then we'll go from there. All right, all the final welds are done. We've got our module stack sitting here on top, all the weight on it, and it's all good. Just got to mark out all the holes here. Excuse me. We'll mark out all the holes here, and yeah, then we'll drill them all out. And then I guess we should be good to go pretty much to start reassembly into the car. Yeah, let's get to it. Alrighty, so I've got our battery framework all put together here. I got the extra legs on for the additional mounting points. I also made another bracket, which I've got over here. This is going to go on top, right where those other modules bolt on. And then our high voltage disconnect is actually going to attach to this. That way, you know, if needed, we can pull that disconnect out, and that makes it hopefully at least a little bit safer. So yeah, I still need to finish drilling out the holes and stuff for this, but I haven't quite decided final positioning for that yet. So we'll set that aside for now. But what I've got to do next is go ahead and disassemble sort of the upper 2 layers off of this thing so that we can get our rear module stack back here into it. And then hopefully we should be able to try and get this thing into the car. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take off the frontmost portion on our 3rd layer. And then this bar I'm going to leave in place on the 2nd layer, essentially. And then we'll remove the 2nd layer from the bottom rack. So that way, hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to get this thing all put together in the car. At least that's the theory. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start taking this apart. We'll get the rear module stack in, and then hopefully we can get it into the car without too much drama. I think I have a game plan. So yeah, we'll see if it works. All right, so it looks like that right there is about as close as I can get without hitting the car with the forklift. So now what I'll have to do is try and see if I can reposition a bit here. I've actually got the engine crane. I'll try and reposition that so that we can pick up this end and then only pick up the other end with the forklift and see what we can get going there. Alrighty, I'm gonna try and crawl in here between everything. It's a bit of a maze, but there we are. So I've got another strap added on the back side of the module stack here, as well as one on our engine crane. I'm gonna see if we can pull, just sort of slide these along the forks to get some of the load picked up. I want to try and see if I can get just a little bit more. Okay, so that is fully supporting one end of this. So let's see if we can slide this whole thing over a bit. Oh yeah, that's not too bad. And I'll try and grab it on this end. Try not to have my feet under it, because that could be bad. Whoa. Okay. We're starting to lose it there a bit because we don't have any stabilization side to side. Okay. So now what's next? I'll try and see if I can reposition one of these straps so that we can get a bit better support on this thing. It's not moving right this second if I'm not putting any load on it, so yeah, I think what I want to do here is reposition this strap so that it actually goes on the pickup points, and I'll do the same over there on the other side, and that should make this a bit more stabilized, I think, since we're picking it up from the top rather than the bottom. All right, so with a bit of finagling, I was able to get it in here at least past the seat hump. So that's kind of the toughest part. Now I just have to figure out how to shuffle it far enough forward that it's kind of in the middle portion of the car. I might try to have my brother come and help me sort of shuffle this in by hand later today, or maybe I can try and stick the engine crane through the front half to try and pick it up, or at least sort of drag it or do something. The other thing that I might be able to try and do is see if I can put some sort of a fork extension on the forklift. That way I've got a bit longer reach. I don't actually have any fork extensions, but I might be able to strap something to the fork to support the weight. This thing doesn't weigh like a crazy amount, but it's just heavy enough that I can't really move it by hand. It's probably about, I don't know, I'd say 300 pounds, give or take. So I think I should be able to strap something long enough to the forklift that I could get in here close to the middle and then actually be able to pick this thing up and move it a little further in. So I don't know, we'll try and see if maybe I can come up with a solution for that, or figure out another way to finagle it in. I might be able to just kind of pick it up one end at a time and just sort of shuffle it back and forth to get it in. But yeah, we'll keep working at this and get it in here eventually. All right, so I was able to get this thing shuffled in here. I just put a strap on either end, and I was able to just pick it up from one side and the other and just kind of shuffle it one side at a time and get it in position. I think I've got it close enough to centered there. I initially wanted to set it a little bit further forward, but I wanted to leave enough space for the front seats to be able to actually be adjusted to comfortable positions. So I think this is pretty much where it's going to sit. So all I've really got to do now is drill some holes for all of the mounting points. I'm just going to drill it in place and bolt it in. We're not going crazy with trying to get this thing super duper centered. I think it's close enough. Also, my little carpet flap here where the high voltage cables are going to come through worked out perfect. It's just right behind this leg on this side. So the cables will be able to come in. They'll actually be under the battery box rather than, initially I thought maybe they'd be coming out in front of it. So that should be great. Yeah, so now I guess I just got to get the drill out, drill those holes in, and get this thing bolted in here, and then we can start building the additional stages on top of it. Although what I might want to do first, before I actually get the next stages on it, before we go too crazy with that, is I might want to try and get the other battery pack into the car here. The only reason I didn't get it mounted in yet is because I wanted to be able to drill these holes through the floor without risk of drilling through the other battery. So we'll get these holes drilled in, bolted in, and then we'll probably start and actually installing the other battery under the car. And then we can start assembling the rest of this thing. And after that, it's really just a matter of getting everything pre-charged so that voltages are perfectly equal so that we can connect the system together. And yeah, that's the plan. So let's get to it. Alrighty, I got the whole battery rack bolted in here. Did have to make a quick run to the hardware store since I was a little bit short on some of the fasteners I needed. But we're fully bolted in there. So this is going to be sort of our second stage that we want to try and get into place here. So I am going to work on getting this lined up. And we might have to use a little bit of percussive maintenance to get this thing persuaded into place. But I think that we should be good to go here. All right, so here's my brilliantly sketchy idea to get our second module stack in. This is actually sort of an engine bay support brace thing that I just removed all the pieces from and only left the hook on one end. So we've got the module stack suspended from that. And the beauty of this is I can actually lower and raise it once we have it inside the car rather than having to go in and out back and forth to the forklift. So I'll be able to kind of position it and also lower it using that screw there. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get this into the car, and then hopefully we can get it in far enough that we can actually get it on top of this thing. I'm not 100% confident that we can actually get it in that far, but I'll try and get it as close as I can, and then I might be able to just kind of scoot it into place. This thing is significantly lighter than the lower stack is. It's half the weight, but it is still pretty heavy. Not quite, it's a little too heavy for me to actually be able to pick up and put in the car manually by myself. So hopefully just by getting it pushed in there far enough, we can kind of get it positioned into place. But it's basically going to be in the exact positioning that you see it. So with the orange plastic terminal covers facing towards the outside, just like this is. So we're facing the right direction. We've just got to get it in there. And yeah, hopefully we can get that to work. Wow. I've got a lot more length to play with here than I initially thought. Need to go up just a smidgen. All right, I don't know that I can get much closer than that without a whole lot of finagling, but I think we're close enough that I can get it to work, because I can kind of scoot it around from here. I probably should have tried to let the forklift down, but we can let it down with this thing. Almost perfect. All right. I think that I can get some bolts in this thing. And then all that's left is the third stage. And of course, we've got to put the main battery in the bottom of the car. The third stage is going to be tricky because I don't have the clearance to make this same trick work. Unless I get rid of this piece, maybe. Then I might be able to do it. But even then, the clearance is going to be pretty tight. So, yeah, I'll have to play with that and see what I can do. Well, no, I might be able to make that work because it's going to be the bottom of it, or rather the top of it. It's flipped upside down, but the top side is going to be right in line with this bar back here. So if I get rid of this piece, since that will run into the headliner if we screw it all the way in like that. So if I just get rid of this piece and just put the straps directly on the bar here, I think that we should have enough clearance to be able to get that in. It just won't be quite as easy to position it without the screw piece, but that's not too bad at all. So, sweet. I think that we can continue on with the procedure here, and we should be able to get this done. Awesome. Alrighty, so I've got the last module stack more or less positioned into place here. So I've already got the rear bar on there, and what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to get this bar into position. Which reminds me, I actually need to remove that part there. So we'll do that here real quick. I think I actually ended up doing these two modules, or module stacks, backwards. This one was supposed to go on top, and this one was supposed to go here, but it doesn't really matter. We'll just have to make sure we get the connections right. It's a little bit funky, but I'm not gonna go disassembling this just to swap those around, because once again, this is a temporary modification just for this challenge. Sweet. All right, I think we can get that one bolted in, and then after that I think we're good to go. Oh yeah, I did get those correct. Okay, wasn't 100% certain there. So we'll go ahead and just toss those over there. We can get the forklift out of the way, and then I can go ahead and get this side bolted in. All right, we're ready to start bolting this last thing on. I've got my crossover piece here for the top with the high voltage disconnect on it. So we're just gonna slot that over there. And then it just bolts in right through those same modules right there, or through these holes that go in that module base plate. I think we are solidly mounted there. We just have our electrical connections to do up on this thing, including for our high voltage disconnect, and basically to get all these in series. I want to figure out where we can put the BPCM, and at some point I'm also going to want to figure out how we can put some sort of plastic covers on this, just so we don't have the battery actually exposed in here. But yeah, I think that at this point I'm ready to try and get the main battery pack into the car and make sure that that's all functional, and then we can deal with this situation right here. Alrighty, as you can see here, I've got the pack positioned under the car, and I've got our auxiliary cables already poked through the floor here. I'm basically just gonna have to go down with the lift incrementally and just keep pulling the cable through, just so we don't get it all bunched up. The other thing that I did off camera is I swapped out the mounting brackets on the rear there. The newer style pack actually uses a little bit different style mounting bracket on the rear. You technically can make the original ones work, but I actually already had a set of those, so just went ahead and threw those on. And then when I did the wiring for the low voltage connector here, I actually forgot to implement our CAN bridge. So I went ahead and wired the CAN bridge in for that, and that way we should be able to make this thing happy with the newer battery. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's gonna do it. So I think we'll go ahead and start lowering this thing into place. And oh, one more thing. Our cross brace that goes all the way across here, I did or at least mostly pre-modify that. So I added some brackets on the ends where it can basically sit flush up against the bottom of the rails here, and I went ahead and ground down all the weld beads that were sticking out. Once the pack is in place, I'll go ahead and bolt the cross brace to the battery itself, and then we'll drill some holes into the side cross bracing here, and I'll probably put in some riv nuts for this thing to bolt into. So yeah, that's kind of the general plan there. So let's go ahead and get to it and get this battery installed. All right, so we got the battery installed. I actually got the cross member piece mocked in here. These bolts are just kind of hand tight. I realize there is a slight problem with this additional connector. This is for the PTC heater on the 2013 and newer Leaf. Of course, since this car doesn't have that connector, we just want to block it off. But the cross member actually gets in the way of where the connector would plug in. Luckily, it's not actually in the way of the connector itself. But yeah, I took one of my normal dummy plugs that I would stick on there, which is just a cut-off plug off of a PTC heater that's been sealed up. I had to cut the bottom off of it in order for it to fit. Should still seal just fine because the seal is actually on the inside. But yeah, just wanted to mention that. So the hackery continues on this thing. But yeah, so that's that thing in. We can get our high voltage connector in. I did already plug in the data connector. Come on. Will it go? There we go. So that is plugged in. Now all that's left is to go ahead and drill the holes for our cross member here. Make sure that thing gets mounted in. I've also got to put some additional fasteners in the rear brackets on the battery. But other than that, this thing is pretty much in here ready to go. So yeah, I'll probably figure out a way to get the car started just to make sure this pack is going to function properly. And then we can go ahead and start working on getting the secondary pack wired in, which I'm probably going to work on tomorrow because it's starting to get pretty late here. So in fact, I probably won't really start on any of this, at least majorly, until tomorrow. So yeah, we'll get to it and we'll keep on going here. Alrighty, it's a new day. We're ready to try and fire this thing up with our pack installed. I've got the cables kind of separated on both sides. I've got the ends covered up because those are going to be live once I install this disconnect. So yeah, a little bit sketchy setup there, but we should be okay. If I can get this thing in here. It's kind of hard to get around the carpet flaps here. And look at that. It works. We are going to need to clear out the message here to do the battery pairing, but that's no problem. Easy enough to do either with a scan tool or with Leaf Spy. In fact, let me go grab my OBD2 dongle and I'll show you guys how that actually works with Leaf Spy. Alright, go ahead and get our OBD2 dongle plugged in here under the dash. If I can find the port. There we go, should be plugged in there. And if I open up Leaf Spy on my phone here, let's see, Leaf Spy, there we go, Leaf Spy Pro. So yeah, you can see we've got a pretty healthy pack here, almost 83% state of health, only 11 millivolt imbalance. But what we want to do is we want to go to the service screen. So we're going to go settings and then service screen, hit back. Then we can go to read DTCs. Okay, and then we want to go back, clear DTCs. And we want to do this P3102, which is to pair the battery, and we'll hit execute. And there we go. Our high voltage battery warning light went off there. Pretty sweet. I've got a few, looks like low voltage related alerts here too. I think this car sat around a lot, so I wouldn't be surprised if the 12-volt battery died on it at some point in the past and threw some of these weird codes like battery voltage abnormal, brake comm, yeah, just a whole bunch of communication and low voltage related codes. So not really an issue for us. There is a TPMS light on. Not 100% sure if the TPMS actually works on this car, but that's not really of any kind of major concern for now. But now we know that our pack is working, and we can go ahead and start working on getting this whole thing set up in parallel with the other one. Alrighty, so I've got the battery under the car re-disconnected from everything. Now we've got to go ahead and start setting up all of the cabling for this pack. So the way that this layout is going to go is exactly like it was in the original enclosure. This end of our bottom stack is the positive terminal of basically the complete battery system. The terminal on this side is going to connect to our high voltage disconnect up here. And then from the disconnect, we're going to connect back to this module here. And then from this terminal, that's going to connect over to the topmost module stack over on the other side. And then the pack negative is also on the top module stack on that other side. So that's how everything's going to be set up. First, I'm going to get all of the series connections for this thing set up. We'll probably put the disconnect in, see what we're at for total voltage, and then we'll be able to power the car back up and adjust our voltage on the car side as necessary to make it match this pack's voltage. That's really the only one we have control over, is the car's voltage, which we can adjust by either putting a load on it to drain the battery, or we can plug it in to charge the battery. So one or the other, we should be able to either charge or discharge as needed in order to get this thing up to where we need it. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get gloved up here to start making connections. And then we can kind of go from there. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is, I think this cable on the disconnect, I was unsure which cable I wanted to go where, but I think I'm going to go with this cable is going to connect right here. So I might have to modify some tabs on that in order to get that to fit, unless I can just do that. But then our cable might be in the way. Well, that might be okay. I was going to say our cable might be in the way of actually getting a cover on here, because I do want to put some sort of plastic sheeting or something around this just so we don't have the battery exposed to passengers in the car. Don't want people sticking their hands in here. So, yeah, let me see if I can come up with a plan for that. Even if I have to add a short bus bar to this in order to extend it a bit, that might be another possibility here. But I think what I'm probably going to do is just cut this tab off of this little cover here, and then our cable can just go right in from the side. So let me see what I can do for a tool to do that. All right. And I think the other thing that I've realized here, unfortunately, is that we're probably not going to be able to keep the LBC. I was hopeful that we would, but our cabling to actually connect to the upper two module stacks, this connector would have to plug in here. Obviously, we don't have enough play in that to make that happen. Even if we could disconnect this whole harness and kind of pick the whole thing up, well, actually, that might be a possibility now that I'm looking at it. But even then, I don't think that we can get the other side connected, because that one is also in a similar boat. So yeah, that's kind of the bummer part on that side of things. Or actually, no. I think that we should have some extension harnesses for that. Maybe we can still do it. I'll have to take a look and see what we've got harness-wise. But for now, I want to try and get this sorted. So I'm going to go ahead and try to chop off this little extension piece on this cover. Make sure I'm not chopping through any wires here. And actually, I don't even need to cut it off all the way. I just need to make it so it can move out of the way. I'm going to do the same thing here. Except on this side, I think I am going to chop it off completely. Just so we have enough clearance. I don't know why I did that way. I should just remove the whole thing like so. Oh yeah, that'll do it. So now, we can go ahead and get that termination on there. I'll get a nut. We can go ahead and get that tightened down. Okay, I think we're good and tight there. And I can still snap that side on. It mostly covers that terminal still. Sweet. Okay, I think we're okay there. Then we're probably going to have to modify our cables down here below, get them to the right lengths, and then I'll be able to use some pieces of this to make the additional connections. So let's go ahead and measure this one out. See how long it needs to be. I was trying to decide how I actually want to route this cable. I guess it can just route underneath, kind of sitting on the carpet here. I would probably prefer to have it attached, but I think this will be fine for it to just lay on top of the carpet. I want to get it under this leg. Okay, and I am going to give myself some slack here. I suppose I could go up through there, but there's a bit of a sharp corner on that, and I don't want to run into that, so we'll just go over the front side. And I probably want to cut it right about there, so where's my Sharpie? Yeah, that seems about right. I'll give myself just another little bit of length here. Okay, so that one's marked. And let me grab my cable cutter and we'll chop that in half here real quick. All right, now going back from this. Okay, so we've got that chopped off. I'll have to go ahead and terminate a ring terminal on there. And then this side we can go ahead and modify to make our additional connections here. So anyway, I'm going to take some measurements, continue on with the process, and come back to you when I think probably when we're ready to put the disconnect in. Alrighty, moment of truth. I've got the whole thing all wired up here. We're going to go ahead and install our high voltage disconnect in the top and make sure that we have full pack voltage as expected. So we're going to go ahead and carefully install our disconnect. Do I have that going in the right way? Thought I did. Yeah, I believe that's correct. There we go. It's just a little bit sticky. And I've got our negative lead actually clamped on the other side there. We'll put our positive lead right here. And look at that, we've got full pack voltage at 387.2 volts. So, we're all good there. Pretty much the only next step here is to get the car side, the battery that's under the car, reconnected. when I looked on Leaf Spy with the car on, we were at about 360 volts. So we might need to charge the car up a little bit to get up to the level of this pack in order to get it all connected properly. I think in the meantime though, I'm probably going to try and play around and see if we can get our LBC connections hooked up on here. If we can get all of our balance connections set up, then at some point I can play around with trying to actually get power and stuff to it so that we can actually measure all of the cell voltages and stuff with Leaf Spy. The LBC still won't have any actual control, but it will still be able to balance the pack, and we'll be able to monitor it using the Leaf Spy app to see what the min and max cell voltages and stuff are. That way we can try to monitor this thing, make sure it doesn't get overcharged or over discharged, which we definitely want to avoid. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we have some extension harnesses that are supposed to go here as well as to the same connector on the other side, which we should be able to get connected onto this thing. In which case, that's pretty much it for balance connections. There's a few temperature sensors and stuff as well. I don't think that we really need that stuff for the LBC to work, but we might try to keep it just because, and that way we can get actual accurate temperature monitoring as well. So I'm going to see what we've got for harnesses there, and we'll see if we can come up with a solution. All right, so I was wrong about there being any sort of extension harness for the balance wiring here. I was a little bit messed up with where this connector was in relation to where they plugged into those connectors there. They actually would normally be basically, or rather this connector to the rest of the harness. So anyway, what I ended up doing is I disassembled all of the loom on this wiring harness, and now I can make it work. So this connector right here actually plugs in over there on the other side. I can feed it through in between, but of course we have a bunch of bare wires and we don't want any of those to rub and chafe on anything and cause a short. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff re-wrapped up again with just some more orange tape. And I've got a little bit of wiring loom as well to help protect the wiring as well. So I'm going to work on getting that put together, and then we should have a complete balance wiring harness that we can just plug right back in. Alrighty, we've come down to the point where we're just about ready to start getting this thing connected up. The only connection left to do is the positive connection that would connect the pack, the two packs together essentially. The negative one is already done up, but what I'm going to do here is before connecting that, I'm going to get the car powered up. I want to bring it outside just for safety reasons. I don't think there's really any super high risk of a thermal runaway with the way that I'm going to do this connection, but I'm not going to take any risks. So we'll get the car powered up and pull it outside. That way we can also plug it in to charge it if we need to, which I think we will need to charge it a little bit. And then the next step after that is really just to try and get the voltages as close as possible before we make the final connection. That way we can eliminate the risk of a big basically a big discharge. If you have too much of a voltage differential, you'll get basically a big surge of amperage when you make the connection with the two packs trying to equalize to each other. So we want to get the voltages as close as possible so that we don't get a big inrush current like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and get the pack underneath reconnected so that we can power up the car, bring it outside, and then hopefully we can get started on actually making this thing connected, and fingers crossed it'll work. All right, so we've got the car pulled outside here, and now comes the extra sketchy part. So we do have our high voltage battery under the car all connected. I do have the disconnect out on the one in here, but I'm going to go ahead and install that disconnect. And now we need to measure our voltages to make sure that we have everything equalized. I mentioned before that I already had the negative terminal on the back side here connected, so we can actually just connect our little clamp on back there so that we can measure that one. So I'll just kind of climb over and try to get this clamped on there. It's proving to be a little bit tricky with the plastic cladding in the way here. There we go. I think that'll get us connected. And then, so now we can look at our pack voltage right here on the multimeter. So if I take this end and touch it to this cable, which is the pack underneath the car, we'll get our pack voltage there. So we've got 389.9. And then if we touch it here, we can measure this one, 387.2. So we're actually pretty close. We're only 2 volts, just a little over 2 volts off. So I'm going to turn the car on and run some sort of load, maybe the AC compressor or the heater or something, just to run a load on it. We want to bring the pack voltage on the car down by about just a little over 2.5 volts, I guess. Is that right? Yeah, a little over 2.5. So 2.7 volts, I guess. So we'll go ahead and get the car started up here, and we'll try and run it down a little. All right, so right now I've just got the AC running, which is a pretty low amperage load. And we'll go ahead and test our voltage here again. So we are going down. And once we hit 387, once we take the load off, the voltage will bounce back up a little bit. There's always a little bit of sag under load, so I'll probably go until we hit maybe about 387 even, and then we'll shut the car off. We'll let everything sit for probably 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll come back to it, see if everything's equalized, because it does take a little bit of time, a lot of the time to make sure everything's equalized, but we're pretty close here. I was actually a lot closer than I thought we would have been to start, so. Yeah, 387.2 and 389.5. So yeah, we just need to bring it down just a little bit more, and then we should be golden. Alrighty, folks, I think we're pretty much all equalized here. We're at 387.3 on the main pack, and if I can get that disconnected, our auxiliary pack is also at 387.3. So I think we're about as close as we're ever going to get. So I'm going to go ahead and get this ready to connect. Now our voltages are the same, so hopefully we shouldn't have any major inrush current, but I'm still going to be super duper cautious here. I'm going to actually kind of stand outside the car here and touch these together and make sure that we don't get a big arc. All right, no arc. So we are good to go. Try to get that on here, maybe. All right, there we go. Our 2 packs are officially connected together. I think technically this little thing here is supposed to go under this flange. There we go. Awesome. So we are all connected up. Both packs are in parallel, and we should be good to go. I did notice when I was doing kind of the discharging and stuff here. Let me get these gloves off now since my hands are sweating in them. So yeah, I did notice when I was doing the testing here that the car kept throwing isolation faults when I was trying to do the discharging and stuff. The BMS is what does the measurements for isolation faults, and apparently if you have 2 BMSs that are grounded to the chassis at the same time, it throws an isolation fault, which kind of makes sense since that's sort of a limiting factor in how the isolation values get measured. So I unplugged everything from the BMS here, and now we don't get any isolation faults. I'm going to have to figure out a solution for this. I can isolate it from the frame by wrapping a piece of rubber or something around it just so it's not touching chassis ground. But when I do go to connect power to it, that might still throw an isolation fault through the 12-volt ground on the power side. Not 100% sure that that's the case, but I suspect that that's probably what would happen. So we might have to go with a completely isolated power supply for this thing, just an external battery to actually power the BMS. Either that, or maybe figure out a setup with some diodes or something on the ground side. I think I'm probably just going to go with a simple external battery to power this thing, because that's just the simple solution, and this is a temporary setup. So if we just have an external 12-volt supply, that should be fine just to keep this thing powered so it can do the cell monitoring and voltage balancing, and that way we can actually keep an eye on the cell voltages and stuff. So that's a little bit of a side project at the moment. The main thing that I want to get done now is I want to figure out a way to enclose this whole thing, and then we can play around with our powers and grounds for this thing and hopefully get that reconnected. But yeah, I think that we're about ready to try and take this thing for a test drive and make sure there's no other operational issues. But it seems like at this point, everything is good. Alrighty, we're pulling out onto the street here. Make sure everything's operational. Seems like everything is good so far. We are showing pretty low charge estimation, but that's because we were running a bunch of loads with the car just sitting. And of course this is going to be wildly inaccurate because it has no idea there's a bunch of extra capacity. Definitely feels heavier going over speed bumps. In fact, I would say that we even maybe bottomed out the suspension on that other speed bump, so that's fun. But yeah, we're cruising along. No errors. Haven't had the isolation fault pop up again since I unplugged the BMS on our auxiliary pack. Go ahead and make another turn here, and we'll head on back to the shop. Alrighty folks, we're back with the Leaf here. I actually ran and just grabbed lunch for it real quick, took it on a little bit longer test drive than what we did before, and everything seems to be operating perfectly fine. I've got these just kind of corrugated plastic sheets here. We're just going to use that for our covering to go around the battery. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all cut up, and I'm basically just going to poke some holes in them and just zip tie it to the frame there. So I think that ought to work, and we'll get this thing together, and that should be that for this thing pretty much. Other than attempting to see if I can get some 12 volt external wiring for the LBC. I think the plan for this is going to be to isolate it from the car, you know, so that it's not actually grounded, the case, and then we'll just run power for it with an external 12 volt source. So whether that's just a car battery sitting in here, or you know, like one of those external power packs that have got the inverter on them. If it's one that's got a 12 volt supply, something like that should work just fine too. So probably just cut that plug off, and then we'll just need to utilize the correct wires here to provide power and get the CAN bus. And then I'll just put in an OBD2 port so that we can plug in a dongle and monitor this thing with Leaf Spy. So yeah, I guess I need to do that before I put the covering on, and then we should be good. Alrighty, so I've got our wiring harness here set up so that we can run Leaf Spy externally. This is actually just an old Leaf battery to OBD2 adapter that I had that I hacked up. I've got a better one that I usually use now, and this one was just sitting on the shelf. But we've got an OBD2 port here. We only need basically whatever 4 or 5 different connections. We're going to go ahead and just plug that thing in. And then over here we've got our power and ground, and I just have a jump pack here that I'm going to power that up with. So let me grab our leads off, and we should have ground, and then we've got power, and I'll turn that on. You can see we do have power at our OBD2 port there. And now I will take out Leaf Spy here in a moment. There we go, Leaf Spy Pro. We want to go back. We actually want to quit and restart because I was in service mode. And then I want to set this to be battery only. So we're going to go 2012. Or actually, we need to go all the way. Oh, there we go, BMS. So we want BMS only. 24 kilowatt hour. And there we go. So now we're connected. So our BMS is fully connected here. We've only got whatever, about, I guess, 17. It's fluctuating a little bit, but pretty small imbalance there. State of health is 60%. So this is actually a bit lower than what I had originally thought. So we can actually do a pretty decent calculation of how much usable capacity we should have out of this thing. between the new pack, which the new pack was at about 83%. By the way, a new 24 kilowatt hour LEAF pack had 21 usable kilowatt hours of energy. So if we go 21 kilowatt hours times 0.83, that's 17 kilowatt hours out of the pack we swapped into the bottom of the car. And then if we add that to this one, which is going to be 21 times 0.6, that gives us 30 kilowatt hours of usable capacity out of the two packs combined. So that's pretty sweet. But yeah, there you go. We've got this thing all set up and working. I'll just have to come up with a little bit more permanent solution for the 12 volt power source for this thing. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for getting this sorted. Now we can go ahead and enclose this whole battery setup. Alrighty, I've gone full on hack mode with the duct tape and cable ties, but we've got our enclosure put together for the battery pack here. So I used that white foam board, cut some pieces to the correct dimensions, and then I was struggling to figure out what exactly to do with the top, and I decided to just take a piece and kind of bend it over and cut some flaps in it and just sort of tape it in place there. So that kind of works. And I did add a couple of high voltage labels. All that's really left to do at this point is just get the rear seat and the rest of the interior back together here. And then Danny is supposed to be picking this up. It sounds like probably tomorrow afternoon. If I have time, I might try and scab together sort of a funnel out of that high voltage disconnect cover plate there, which goes in our flap in the carpet here to cover our main high voltage disconnect. That way we can try to dump ice in it and basically try to cool the main battery pack with some ice water sort of going down the road. So anyway, yeah, I'll try and do that if I have time. In the meantime, I'm going to get the interior put together here real quick, and then I want to take this car to a fast charger here in a minute and just make sure that it actually does charge on CHAdeMO, because that would suck if it didn't. So we'll go ahead and confirm all that and see how it goes. All right, interior's all put back together in the rear here. Let's go ahead and get this thing out of the shop and take it over to the local CHAdeMO charger and make sure this thing juices up the way that it should. Alrighty, we're at my closest DC fast charger. This is actually a battery backup power node station that was put in by Electric Era. We'll go ahead and get this thing plugged in and activated, and we'll make sure that it charges. Come on. Did I get that latched in? I think I did. Alright. I'll probably have to shut off the camera to get this activated. Alright. Payment is authorized. Beginning session. Let's see if it actually charges. And charge port is locked. Car is indicating that it's charging. It's going through its checks here. Oh, there we go. I heard the car beep. And there we go. Now we're charging. Sweet. So we're at 65%. Let's see where that thing maxes out at. 33. So 32, 33. That's not too terrible for 65% state of charge on a first gen LEAF like this. So cool. I'm going to let this charge for a couple minutes, just make sure there's no hiccups, and probably run into the convenience store here and grab a snack. All right, our charging situation went over without a hitch. We'll make sure to turn traction control off, since the car likes to freak out if the traction control gets left on. And we'll go ahead and head on back to the shop and park it overnight. And potentially we'll try and come back to do that funnel idea in the morning, depending on whether or not I've got time to work on that. That's a bit of a secondary concern at this point, but I think everything else on the car is pretty much sorted. Oh, look at that, they've got an E-Transit with a fold down bed over there. That's pretty slick. All right, back to the shop we go, and I think that'll do it. Alrighty folks, well that's a wrap for this one. I actually did test drive the car a bit more last night. I actually in total put a little over 35 miles on it, just making sure everything's sorted and that the car continues to operate normally, no isolation faults, nothing like that. So yeah, it's pretty much good to go. I didn't end up really having time to try and build that funnel for the rear disconnect area, but I think that we can probably just dump some ice in there without a funnel. I know that there's people that have experimented with that before on Leafs. So yeah, bit of a hack job project here just to get this thing going. Obviously this is not something that I would ever recommend anybody do. And of course, once we're done with the challenge, we're probably gonna pull this thing back apart just because it's really not the safest setup. But it should make for a pretty fun time, and maybe we can do a legit actual battery upgrade on this thing at some point in the future. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching.